There's a red-hot presidential race going on, though not here in Connecticut. But some surrogates are out there for their candidates, and we are joined today by three of them. State Senator Bob Duff, who's on Team Buttigieg, State Representative Mike D'Agostino for Bernie Sanders, and State Senator Matt Lester in the middle for Elizabeth Warren. And gentlemen, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll begin with you, and I know that some of your preferences have changed in 4 years. Mike D'Agostino, you supported Clinton last time, and now you're on Team Sanders. Why?
I did. I fell into the trap last time around of, who is the best situated to beat Trump rather than really investing in the policies. And I'm not going to make that mistake this time around.
And Senator Lester, excuse me, I know that you just won a new seat in recent years, so you got a big promotion. You supported Clinton last time, but reluctantly you wanted Elizabeth Warren.
Sure. I wished she'd run 4 years ago, and I'm glad she's running now.
And you're on Team Buttigieg. What led you to him?
I've known Pete for about 8 years now, 9 years. We've had dinner together. We're part of a group in Washington called New Deal Leaders. I've had a chance to spend a lot of time with him, and what you see on TV is exactly how he is in person: thoughtful, caring, and really forward-thinking.
Do we think that Bernie Sanders can win? There are a lot of people who say he's perhaps too old. He's 78, a socialist. He admits that. Will that message play across the country?
Part of the reason to support him is absolutely he can win. He's the only candidate, I think, in the Democratic field who has an appeal across a large swath of voters, including Trump voters. If you actually saw from the 2016 election, there were a number of Trump voters who actually would have voted for Bernie Sanders. He can speak to that entire electorate, frankly, those core constituencies that we lost as Democrats last time, especially blue-collar workers, labor workers, and that's another reason why I'm supporting him. He's the only candidate who's been consistently there for organized labor throughout the course of his career.
What is the difference between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders?
Well, that's a great question. I want to get to that. But before that, I want to just be real for a second. If we have a conversation today about the future of the Democratic Party, I think we have to talk about the folks who are here and also the folks who are in the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party is mostly composed of women, and it is the most diverse political party in the history of this country. And I think we need a candidate who connects with voters, who has a plan not only for building a big grassroots movement, but also a plan to get things done in Washington. And nobody has that like Elizabeth Warren. She really understands how to make a difference and understands why families have been going bankrupt in this country for so long. She will root out the corruption that got them voting for Donald Trump in the first place.
Your candidate's sort of a surprise success story this year because at the very beginning of the campaign, he had a name people couldn't pronounce. He was the mayor of a small city, 37 years old, correct?
38 now.
Yeah, 38. And, now he's near the top of the polls in some of the polls that are taken. Do you think he can win?
Well, he speaks very genuinely, and people want that. They want authenticity. He started in Iowa with just a very few people. He started his campaign this time last year with 3 staff members. Now he has probably over 800 staff people. So the voter what he's saying is resonating with people, and I think they're looking for that kind of a change. And he's somebody who agrees the fact that we've got to grow jobs, we've got to make sure we have good gun control, we've got to make sure we protect workers. So he's saying a lot of the things that people want to hear.
I want to ask, both Warren and Sanders are progressive, and they've been endorsed by, well, particularly in Sanders' case, by some people who have run against establishment Democrats, Alexandria
AOC.
AOC is prime example of this. Yet some of the people running here in Connecticut would be considered more establishment. Do you believe a progressive Democrat should take on perhaps Rosa DeLauro or John Larson and some of the other members here?
Well, I think a large sharing of ideas is great for the party. You need that. You need people pushing from both the left, the right, and the center. I think it's been terrific, though, to see what Senator Sanders has done in terms of pushing the conversation. I mean, look, all the candidates are talking about Medicare for all of them. There was only one person doing that 4 years ago, and that was Bernie Sanders. There's a big difference between being a candidate and a catalyst, and he's a catalyst for change, and that's why you're seeing a lot of that support from the progressive left, from AOC, from people who want to see change.
But would you want someone of his ilk to challenge perhaps a DeLauro or a Larson here in this state who are not as,
Oh, I don't think you can make I don't think there's anybody more progressive on our delegation than Rosa is. I mean, she is beloved across the board, and has, for example, in terms of the synchronicity of those positions, she was against things like NAFTA and those trade deals the same time Bernie was. So there's been a real congruence between the two of them.
And what about someone to take on Larson?
Well, I live in Rose's district, but look, let me tell you this. I think that the most important thing we can do as a party is focus on the corruption in Washington that comes out of Donald Trump and out of Mitch McConnell in Washington. That's where I'm focused on. I think we've got a progressive delegation that is standing up for the values of the Democratic Party. I think this is a progressive party, and the party is best when we're true to its values, and that's why I'm supporting Elizabeth Warren, because I think she speaks to it. I think she speaks to the core concerns that struggling families are facing and want to hear addressed.
The voters in Connecticut are kind of being left out in the cold during this presidential race because our primary is not till the end of April, and the likelihood of all three candidates still standing by April 27th, I believe is our date, is they're low. Let's be honest. I mean, that's the way these things historically work. Should Connecticut have an earlier primary?
Well, when it was Clinton versus Obama, Connecticut was important, and Obama ended up winning, even though everybody thought Clinton was going to win. So I think that depending on how this all goes, Connecticut could be very important in the primary, because if you remember back then, it went all the way till June, almost to the convention. I think that it could be a very robust kind of a primary, and a lot of people can continue. Not everybody's going to continue, obviously, but I think all of our goals here, our shared goal, is to get Donald Trump out of this White House and to restore the America that we've always had. And I personally think Pete is the only candidate who can do that.
But all three candidates are spending all their time in Iowa, New Hampshire these days, and South Carolina. They don't come to Connecticut except to pick up a check at a fundraiser, something like that. Do you believe that Connecticut could be a stronger player in the primary process if we had an earlier date?
Well, yes, and I will say, actually, Elizabeth Warren doesn't do fundraisers. So she won't be coming to Connecticut to pick up checks. She'll be coming to campaign when we have the Connecticut primary, and we'll welcome her when that happens. I think we need to amplify voices like Connecticut, because Connecticut is a diverse state that actually is very close to the demographics of the country as a whole. And I think we need to do that as a Democratic Party, is to figure out how to make sure that we're hearing from everyone, that we're not just hearing from a segment of folks. So I think moving Connecticut forward could be good, but I'm excited about when we actually get our turn to vote for our candidates. I think that would be wonderful.
Last week, Senators Kathy Austin and Len Fasano said that they would sponsor a bill to require that we have an earlier primary, perhaps within a month of New Hampshire or something like that, so that the candidates would come here, and certainly they'd spend a lot of money in our state in terms of the catering and the offices that they would get in the whole bit. Would you support that, Representative D'Agostino, to have an earlier primary?
I don't know. Yes, but I don't know if an earlier primary really changes the goalpost for Connecticut. I think really what you need to see, and I know Senator Lesser has supported this, I think Senator Duff as well, the national popular vote. I mean, really the only way to really do this and make sure they campaign everywhere is to do the national popular vote. Whether our handful of electoral votes are done a little earlier or a little later, I don't think it really helps us too much. I do think the race will be interesting in terms of a bellwether for Sanders-Warren, though, because there's a large progressive movement in Connecticut, and it'll be interesting to see where they go in that, because I feel like at some point when that shakes out, those two forces are going to unite behind one candidate, Bernie Sanders, and that will really provide the swell that's going to take.
And if they're still in the race, we are out of time. I'm sorry, Senator Duff, but
just real quick, I just want to
seconds.
say, Mayor Pete supports the national popular vote as we passed in Connecticut here a couple of years ago, and we've all supported it, and we all think it's a great idea.
Well, they're all welcome in Face the State when they come here. All right, Senators Duff, Lesser, and Representative D'Agostino, we thank you for being in the program today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In a moment, Denise flashback to something near and dear to her, Long Island Sound. And we welcome your comments about today's program on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.